The small metal desk was opaque, heavy and cold, forgotten in the darkest corner at the bottom of a leather chest. Its surface, once bright, now showed the color of dry earth covered by a thick layer of dust and time. The object didn't reflect the room's light. It was locked, silent, as if it had given up on pointing any direction. Matias held the piece in the palm of his hand. Its weight revealed it was solid, made to last, but abandonment had stolen its purpose. With his thumb, he tried to push the small side latch to open the lid, but the metal wouldn't yield. The hinge was stiff, glued by years of humidity and disuse. Maybe this is just another one of those quiet stories, made to relax. And sometimes that's all we really need. Perhaps this is just another one of those tranquil stories, made for relaxing, stories that simply unfold. And sometimes that's all we need, just a quiet moment. Matias made a simple decision. That old compass wouldn't spend another night at the bottom of the chest. He would clean it, loosen its parts, restore movement to the needle, and shine to the brass. The object would find its north again, its true purpose. He closed the leather chest lid with a muffled thud. The sound quickly faded in the room, swallowed by the dense silence coming from outside. It was a winter night. Beyond the double-paned window, snow fell ceaselessly, covering the dirt ground, the rooftops, and the tree branches with a thick white blanket. The snow muffled the world's sounds, creating a profound stillness that made the house's interior feel even safer and more isolated. The air near the window was cold, but the center of the room was warmed by an iron stove where thick logs burned slowly. Matias walked to his work table, a firm, light wooden plank illuminated by a yellow-domed lamp. He placed the compass in the center of the table. The sound of metal touching wood was dry. He pulled up a high-backed chair and sat down, feeling the comfort of the seat. The lamp's yellow light fell upon the compass, revealing more clearly the dark oxidation spots and the dirt accumulated in the grooves of its rim, a testament to time's passage, waiting for his touch. He breathed deeply, smelling the faint scent of wood smoke and the distant crispness of winter that always found a way to seep through the cracks. His hands were warm. He rubbed them together for a moment, preparing for the task. The work would require patience. There was no rush. The night outside was long. The snow continued to fall in slow, silent flakes, and time within that room seemed to have paused, waiting only for the movement of his hands. Matias opened the table drawer. The sound of wood sliding was soft. From it, he took out a piece of clean cotton cloth, a small glass vial containing cleaning oil, and a thin-tipped wooden rod. He arranged these items around the compass, creating a small space of care. The lamp's light cast short shadows of the objects on the table. He looked at the closed compass once more. The work was about to begin, and the first step would be to remove the thick layer of forgetfulness covering the metal. Matias picked up the dry cotton cloth. He folded it twice, forming a firm square, and rested it on the compass. With slow, circular movements, he began to rub the lid's surface. The friction of the cloth against the dirty metal produced a rough sound, a faint scratching that filled the space between the crackles of the logs in the stove. The loose dust began to yield.
The white fabric soon gained gray smudges. Matias turned the compass in his hand, feeling the rough texture of the dirt beneath his fingers, and continued to rub the rounded edges.
The dry cleaning was just the beginning, but it already changed the feel of the piece. The metal seemed less dusty, though it was still dark and stained. Matias set the cloth aside and picked up the small glass vial. He unscrewed the metal cap. A soft scent of mineral oil and resin rose into the air, mingling with the aroma of burning wood. It was a clean scent of workshop and careful tending. He moistened a clean tip of the cotton cloth with a few drops of the oil. The translucent stain spread across the fabric. With the damp cloth, he touched the compass again. This time the movement was different. The oil reduced the friction, and the cloth slid smoothly over the lid. Matias applied a constant pressure with his thumb. He rubbed the center of the lid, moving his finger in small, repetitive circles. The sound was now a damp whisper. Gradually, the oil's chemistry began to dissolve the old oxidation. The dark, earthen-colored grime began to break apart, revealing patches of an aged yellow underneath. Matias had no hurry. The rhythm of his hands found a calm tempo, rubbing, turning the piece, rubbing again. He felt the weight of the brass warming in his palm from the heat of the friction. Outside, the wind blew a little stronger, making the snowflakes gently tap against the window glass, a sound like fine sand falling on paper. Matias heard the sound, but kept his eyes on the small metal piece. He folded the cloth to use a clean part, applied another drop of oil, and focused on the compass's sides. There were small grooves all around the rim, made for fingers not to slip when holding the instrument. The dirt was encrusted there. Matias used his nail behind the cloth, pressing the damp cotton into each sunken line. He went all the way around the compass, following the perfect curve of the circle. The oil dissolved the dark grime, which became trapped in the cloth. The transformation was slow but continuous. Where before there was only opacity, now a matte sheen emerged. The brass began to show its true color, a warm, golden hue that seemed to absorb the yellow light of the lamp. Matias cleaned the compass base with the same care. The scent of the cleaning oil was more present now, an aroma that brought a sense of order. He used a dry part of the cloth to remove excess oil from the surface. The metal, now free of thick dirt, was smooth to the touch. Matias ran his thumb over the clean lid. The roughness had disappeared. The compass was still closed, but it no longer seemed like a forgotten object. It seemed like something waiting to be used. The surface was clean, but the compass remained closed. The small side latch that held the lid in place and the hinge on the opposite side were stuck. Matias held the compass with his left hand and with his right thumb tried again to push the latch pin. He applied force, but the metal wouldn't move. Time had soldered the small brass parts together. Forcing it further could break the mechanism. He needed delicacy. He picked up the oil vial again. With the thin-tipped wooden rod, he collected a single drop of the liquid. With a steady hand, he brought the rod's tip to the compass hinge. The drop of oil touched the tiny metal junction and almost immediately was absorbed by the invisible crevices. He repeated the process on the latch, letting a minuscule drop trickle down the pin's base, a patient offering. Now it was time to wait. The oil needed time to penetrate, soften the hardened grime, and lubricate the path. Matias leaned back in the chair. He looked at the window. The snow continued to fall.
a white, silent curtain descending endlessly from the dark sky. The room's indoor light reflected on the flakes closest to the glass. The winter silence was profound. Inside the room, the iron stove gave a low crackle, the embers settling at the bottom. Heat radiated through the space, keeping the cold at bay outside.
After a few minutes, Matias leaned back over the table. He picked up the compass. The metal was warm from his previous contact with his hands. He placed his thumb on the side latch. Instead of pushing hard, he began to make small back and forth movements, gently rocking the pin. At first, it seemed nothing had changed, but on the fourth movement, he felt a slight give, a fraction of a millimeter. He continued. The oil was doing its work. The rocking motion became looser. Matias pressed the latch down. There was a dry sound, a small snap of metal releasing. The latch yielded. The lid, however, didn't open on its own. The hinge was still stiff. Matias held the compass base with one hand and with the fingertips of the other grasped the lid's edge. He pulled slowly. The metal creaked, a sharp, short sound. He didn't force it all the way. He opened it a little, then closed it, opened it a little more, and closed it again. With each opening and closing movement, the oil penetrated deeper into the hinge and the friction lessened. The creaking was replaced by a smooth sliding sound. Matias opened the lid completely. It stopped at a right angle, firm. The compass's interior was revealed in the lamp's light for the first time in many years. A scent of stored air, mixed with dry dust, rose from inside the piece. Matias smiled faintly. The opening and closing mechanism was restored. He closed the lid. The click of the latch engaging was crisp and precise. He pressed the latch again, and the lid released with ease. The movement was now natural, effortless, like the breathing of an object that had just awakened. With the lid open, the compass's interior was revealed, but it was still unclear. The glass protecting the dial was fogged, covered by a milky haze of old moisture and fine dust that had managed to seep through the crevices over the years. Under the glass, the dial with the directions looked like a faded drawing, and the needle was still, motionless, waiting. Matias noticed that a small, very thin brass ring held the glass in place. He picked up the wooden rod and with its tip searched for the small slit in the ring. He found it. With a careful movement, using the soft wood as a lever to not scratch the metal, he pushed the ring upwards. The rim yielded with a faint click and came loose. Matias removed it with his fingertips and placed it on the table. Next, he turned the compass upside down onto his palm of his hand. The glass disc fell gently onto his skin. It was light and thin. Matias placed the compass base on the table and picked up the glass by its edges. He used a clean piece of cotton cloth. He didn't use oil this time, just the dry cloth. He began to clean the glass, rubbing the center and rotating the piece. The milky haze was stubborn. He brought the glass close to his mouth and breathed a warm breath on the surface. The moisture of his breath fogged the glass for a second. Quickly, he wiped it again. The friction of the cotton on the glass produced a sharp, clean sound. The haze disappeared. The glass became transparent, reflecting the lamp's light like a small mirror of still water. He cleaned the other side with the same care, checking against the light for any remaining smudges. The glass was perfect.
He rested it beside the brass rim. Now the dial was exposed. It was made of thick paper, almost like parchment, glued onto a metal backing. The backing was white, but time had left it with an antique ivory tone. The letters indicating the cardinal points were drawn with thick black ink. There was a layer of loose dust on the paper. Matias couldn't use a cloth or liquids there, at risk of smudging the ink or tearing the backing.
He opened another drawer and took out a small brush with very soft bristles used for cleaning lenses. Holding the compass carefully, he began to sweep the dial. The sound of the soft bristles touching the dry paper was an almost inaudible whisper. He swept the dust from the center to the edges. With each pass of the brush, the black letters became sharper. The north, marked with a drawn spearhead, emerged with clarity. The south, east, and west also appeared strong against the ivory backing. Matias blew lightly to clear away the last grains of dust that had accumulated on the inner rim. The dial was clean. The circular degree markings could be read effortlessly. Clarity had returned to the instrument's interior. The cold air outside seemed to contrast with the warm, illuminated precision of that small reading space. The compass was beginning to reveal its guiding capability, just waiting for its heart to beat again. The dial was clean, but the needle, the compass's vital center, remained lifeless. It was pointing in some random direction, resting lightly on the paper backing, trapped in its own inertia. The needle was a delicate piece, half painted dark and half left as polished metal, balanced on a tiny central pin, as fine as the tip of a sewing needle, a silent sentinel. Matias brought his face closer to the table to see better. The yellow light illuminated the central axis. He noticed a minute accumulation of dark dirt right at the base of the pin, where the needle should spin freely. That small barrier was enough to prevent movement. Friction was the enemy of precision. He picked up the wooden rod again. With his fingertips, he further sharpened the wood's tip, breaking off a small piece to create a thin, sharp splinter. With extreme concentration, he brought the rod's tip to the center of the dial. He didn't touch the needle. He used the wooden tip to very delicately scrape the base of the metal pin. The movement was minute. He felt the resistance of the hardened dirt yield under the wood's pressure. A tiny speck of dark dust came loose. He used the soft bristled brush to sweep that speck away from the dial. Next, he needed to ensure the axis was perfectly smooth. He couldn't use oil there, as the liquid would attract dust and jam the needle again in the future. He needed dry lubrication. He picked up a graphite pencil on the table. With the same wooden rod, he scraped the pencil's tip, creating a fine gray powder on a piece of paper, a whisper of possibility. He touched the rod's tip to the graphite powder, picking up an almost invisible amount. With a steady hand, he brought the rod to the compass's central pin and deposited the graphite powder right at the contact point between the needle and the axis. The graphite slid down the thin crevice, a silent release. To test, Matias lightly touched the needle's tip with the wood. The needle moved. The movement was still a bit stiff, but it didn't stop immediately. It swayed a little before stabilizing. He touched it again, pushing the needle to the side. This time, the sway was looser. The graphite was spreading along the axis, creating a sliding surface. Matias held the compass in his hand and made a gentle movement with his wrist. The needle spun quickly. When he stopped his hand, the needle continued to sway, going back and forth in ever smaller oscillations. The ambient sound of the room seemed to have vanished, leaving only his attention focused on that small piece of metal swaying. The needle oscillated to the left, then to the right,
in a natural rhythm until it finally stopped, a quiet triumph.
It was no longer resting on the backing. It was floating perfectly balanced on the pen. The dark tip pointed firmly in one direction. Matias rotated the compass base, moving the dial, but the needle remained still in space, faithful to its magnetic north. The instrument's heart had begun to beat again. The invisible force of the Earth now found a response in that small, friction-free axis. The compass was alive again. With the needle free and the dial clean, it was time to close the space and protect the work. Matias looked at the separate pieces on the light wooden table, the compass base, the transparent glass, and the thin brass rim. The assembly process required the same care as disassembly to avoid trapping new dust inside, a delicate recreation. He picked up the glass disc by the edges, making sure not to leave fingerprints on the clean surface. With a precise movement, he lowered the glass disc over the dial. The glass settled into the small inner step of the brass rim with a very subtle contact sound, a faint click of glass against metal. The dial and needle were instantly protected, framed by perfect transparency, a clear shield. Next, he picked up the brass rim. He positioned the ring over the glass. With both thumbs, Matias pressed the rim's edges down, applying equal force on opposite sides. The ring slid down, scraping lightly against the compass's inner wall. The pressure increased until the ring found its fitting groove. There was a dry, satisfying snap. The ring was in place, locking the glass firmly. The compass was whole again. But the work was not yet complete. The initial cleaning had removed the thick dirt, but the brass needed polishing to regain its true texture. Matias put away the oil and picked up a different piece of fabric, a yellow, dry, and very soft flannel. He didn't use any additional products. The secret now was just the friction of the soft fabric against the clean metal, a gentle caress. He wrapped the compass in the flannel and began to rub it vigorously between his palms. The rapid movement generated heat. He felt the piece's temperature rising through the flannel. The sound was a continuous, quick rustling, momentarily muffling the crackle of the wood stove. He polished the lid, the base, and the rounded sides. He opened the compass and polished the inside of the lid where the brass was smooth as a mirror, reflecting light. When he finally stopped and opened the flannel, the transformation was complete. The compass was no longer an opaque, lifeless object. The brass shone with a warm, rich, deep color. The lamp's light reflected in the metal's curves, creating clear bands of light that followed the object's round shape. The side grooves were clean and defined. The hinge no longer had dark oxidation marks. Matias held the compass in the palm of his left hand, open and shining. The restoration work was finished, and now it was time to observe the tool in its fullness. He rose from the chair. The sound of the wooden legs lightly scraping the floor broke the room's constant quietude. He moved away from the work table, carrying the compass with him, keeping his hand flat and steady. A moment of contemplation. He took a few steps toward the center of the room, near the iron stove. Heat radiated strongly there, warming the air. Matias looked at the dial. The dark needle was perfectly aligned. He slowly turned his body, rotating his shoulders to the right. The ivory paper dial rotated with him, but the needle floated over the pin, remaining absolutely still in space, ignoring the man's movement and pointing firmly in the same direction. He turned to the left, and the needle maintained its invisible anchor. The movement was fluid, without jerks, an immediate and silent response to the Earth's magnetic force. Matias walked to the window. The air there was colder. He looked through the double-paned glass. The night remained dark, and the snow fell with the same serene constancy, covering the world outside with a thick blanket that softened all forms. The trees in the distance were just heavy white shadows. The dirt path leading to the house had disappeared under the snow. The landscape outside was vast, cold, and without visible paths. He looked at his hand again. The small compass contrasted with the vastness outside. In the midst of that white, disorienting immensity, the small brass circle offered a certainty. He aligned the letter N on the dial with the dark tip of the needle. Now the instrument not only pointed north, but organized all the space around it. He knew immediately that the dense forest lay to the east and that the main road, invisible under the snow, ran to the south. The sensation of holding the functioning compass brought a simple mental clarity. There was no confusion, no stuck parts. The friction had been removed, the dust had been cleaned, and what was left was pure function. The needle rested calmly under the transparent glass, safe and free. The polished brass reflected the faint light from the table lamp and the orange glow of the stove's embers. Matias ran his right thumb over the smooth edge of the brass case. The metal still held some of the warmth of the polishing. He felt the precision of the work in his hands. That object had spent years in the dark, paralyzed, but its nature had not been destroyed, only obscured. It took only care, time, and attention for it to return to exactly what it was created to be. He watched the needle sway one last time in a micro-oscillation and stop, firm and decisive, cutting the cold air of the room with its invisible direction. Matias turned his back to the window and walked back to the work table. The sound of his footsteps was soft on the wooden floor. He approached the circle of yellow light projected by the lamp. With a calm movement, he closed the compass lid. The click of the brass latch sounded crisp in the silent room, a sound of closure. He placed the compass on the table. The polished metal gleamed softly against the light wood. He began to organize the space. He closed the small oil vial, feeling the texture of the cold glass. He folded the dirt-stained cotton cloth and the yellow polishing flannel, placing them in the drawer. He threw away the small graphite-smudged wooden splinter and put away the soft bristled brush. The sound of the drawer closing was a long, smooth slide. The table was left empty, except for the lamp and the restored compass, which now seemed to belong to that place, clean and ready, a quiet conclusion. Matias stretched his arm and turned the lamp switch. The dry click extinguished the yellow light. The room was immediately enveloped in twilight. The only source of illumination now came from the iron stove, where the last flames had died out, leaving only a pile of red embers that pulsed with a gentle warmth. A faint orange light painted the wooden walls and cast long shadows on the floor, a soft glow.
He didn't return to the chair. He remained standing near the table, looking at the small brass object that reflected a subtle glow from the embers. The room's silence seemed to have changed. It was no longer the silence of something forgotten, but the silence of something at rest. Outside, the wind lost its strength. The snow continued to fall, slow and heavy, accumulating on the roof and branches, deepening the isolation of the winter night, a peaceful slumber. Matias breathed deeply, feeling the warm air of the room and the clean, residual scent of polishing oil. His shoulders relaxed. His hands, which had worked with such precision, rested loosely at his sides. There was nothing left to fix, nothing to clean. The compass was ready, holding within itself the ability to find the way, waiting in silence until the day it was needed. Time within the house resumed its slow pace, matching the calm rhythm of the snow falling in the darkness.